Welcome, everybody. I know it's weird to see my face, but I'm Jenee Rogers. Normally you're Eye from the Sky, but today I'm going to be introducing for this Professionally Evil Webcast. Today we have Kathy Collins, Aaron Moss, and a new person from a different company from Flair, Eric Clay. And they're going to go into their intros a little more, and I'm just going to stop talking. So I hope you all have a wonderful session, and I'll see you all at the end.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. Yeah, it is weird seeing Jeannie's face, especially whenever we're talking about dark web, where like everything is anonymous. So, Jenee, now everybody knows what you look like, and I hope you're happy with yourself.
Yeah, on the day that everything's supposed to be anonymous, Jenee is not.
And our special guest, Eric Clay here from Flair, is also not anonymous today as well. So I'm sure many of you are probably used to seeing my face from different videos that we've done in the past. And if so, I am sorry. So welcome. Again, this is Secure Ideas Webcast, the haunting of the dark web. We're going to step into some shadows here in a minute and go over some stuff as far as like what the dark web is, what the deep web is, and how it can affect your business, right? So... Do you like scary movies? Kathy, do you like scary movies?
I love scary movies. And yeah, Eric?
I love scary movies. My favorite is probably Midsommar. I don't know how if you guys have seen that one, but it is a fantastic movie. I like the really scary ones that are kind of atmospheric, so it's not just like jump scares. Let's see, there's another one by the same director. I would have to look it up that was also really good that I saw several years ago.
That would be Hereditary.
Yes, Hereditary. That was an amazing one, although
Hereditary
very scary.
I couldn't get into that one. It's so weird. Like,
dude, Hereditary. Oof, it's dark, man. Kathy, what's your favorite scary movie?
Jaws. I know it's not the slasher type, but I mean I love all the old 80s.
No, there's a fear factor in Jaws.
These are my favorite.
Please, Jaws is absolutely, it's a proto-slasher. You're talking to a slasher aficionado here. If you could see the rest of my office, you'd understand. I mean, you can see the Jason mask here, right? I made this, and I made several other ones and everything that I get out and sell. So Jaws is a prototype slasher, basically, because Bruce he's a killing machine, just like most slashers out there, right?
He is. I think it's scarier when it seems like it can happen, right? Like we've made entire generations of people that are afraid to go into the water. Like that's nightmare stuff.
Well, that's what made Halloween so scary, is the fact that it was originally called the Babysitter Murders, because quite frankly, that could happen to anybody in any small town.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some scarier stuff than scary movies, though, right? Like the dark web. So this is our agenda, right? Why does the dark web exist? We're going to go into some of the history of it. How is it different from the regular web, right? Like from the surface web. Some current uses, misconceptions about it. And Eric actually may be able to add some stuff to that here in a little bit whenever he goes over his Flair demo. And then, of course, why it matters to hackers and why it may matter to you at the end of this. As always, if there are any questions, please let us know. You can type them out in the chat, and Jenee will ask those to us as she gets a chance. So, first and foremost,
I'll just say very quickly, I would not have recognized that picture. I admit I'd never seen Scream until like last week, so I do get the reference now. But I'm really glad I caught up before this webinar.
Wow, you have several to catch up on. Was there?
There's 6 of them right
there's like
now.
6.
Go watch them. They're excellent. All of them. I love them all. The third one is probably the weakest of the 6, and it's still really good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Kathy,
yes.
Introduce yourself.
I am Kathy Collins, and I'm a security consultant, obviously here at Secure Ideas. Been here since 2021, based in Jacksonville, Florida, where our home office is. I focus on networks, web applications, physical pen testing, PCI DSS, and being a Costco member. That's one of my fun facts. Yeah.
It's at Costco right now.
The Costco members understand, okay? Everybody brings that up when I put that on there. But if you know, you know, right?
That's right.
I'm also one of the coordinators for Besides Jacksonville, which is on its second year back. It had a hiatus for 5 years, and now we're back on our second year. And it's coming up next month. So I'll have some information at the end of the webcast on that.
Yeah. That's exciting. I wish I could make that. I love B-sides because
I know.
it doesn't list it here, I guess, actually. I guess I forgot to put it in. But my name is Aaron Moss. I am a senior security consultant here at Secure Ideas. I'm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So as one of the guys here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I actually help run B-Sides Oklahoma, one of the larger B-Sides conferences in the world, is my understanding.
That was my first B-Sides. Do you know that? Was
I did not know that.
Yeah. I was like, all B-Sides are like this. This is amazing. Not so much.
So I'm jack of all trades, master of maybe a couple, like it says. I've done help desk. I've been an IT director. I've been consulting for years, security consulting since 2017. So that's whenever I was doing my, that's whenever I started doing the professional hacker thing. Outside of that, I was a consultant for years doing just IT consulting and everything else. Fun facts about me: I'm a deconstructor Christian, which means basically that I have kind of torn apart some of the stuff that I learned in church whenever I was a kid and kind of put it back together in a way that makes sense and fits what the Bible says. Also, as you could tell, I'm a huge horror movie geek, and I'm a huge headbanger and metalhead, even though I don't technically bang my head anymore because of a neck injury. So that's always fun. Eric, we don't have a slide for you, but we'll introduce you here in a little bit whenever we get ready to do the Flare demo, okay?
Works for me.
Fantastic. So, origin story. Kathy, what is the historical background
I think it's
the dark web?
really interesting. And I'm not sure, a lot of people know this. Whenever I talk to anybody about it, they have no clue. But it's been around since the mid-90s. It was developed by the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory in the mid-90s to allow the government to communicate anonymously. So the U.S. government basically founded and paid for the dark web as we know it. Well, it then in the 2004, the Tor project was taken over by some of the original creators of the project and introduced it to the world at large. So that started up, and Tor is it's not the only way to access the dark web, but it is the most popular and arguably the safest one. But it is just a browser, like any other browser that you use, Chrome, Firefox. It's actually built on Mozilla Firefox, a version of it. But a lot of notoriety came to it in 2010, 2011 when Silk Road started up, which a lot of people I think have heard about that. But that was a huge scale drug and black marketplace.
Yeah.
So that was, that operated for years. That was when Bitcoin, first made its debut, I think around that time. And that's when the cost of Bitcoin shot up. I think the first Bitcoin exchange was like 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 pizzas. And it was actually in Jacksonville, Florida, which I think is funny.
That is hilarious, actually. Man, can you imagine 10,000 Bitcoin now?
But yeah, I know that person is probably. I hope that was the best freaking pizza they ever had, but it was in Jacksonville, so probably not.
That's
But yeah, so in 2013 they shut down Silk Road. You've had the other stuff pop up like Alpha Bay, but a lot of people use the dark web for not just nefarious purposes. I think we're going to get into that a little bit more further in. But there's a lot of journalists and activists and whistleblowers and people in countries that have heavy censorship that use it to communicate. So it's got kind of this dual identity, for good and evil, kind of like the picture there.
Aaron, she actually answered that question a while ago. Getting into the dark web is not only through Tor. There's actually several different methods you can do it. We're basically going to cover Tor here very lightly, I think. This is really more about what's out there and what can be obtained from getting on it. It is legal to get to it here in the United States. And certain other countries, it may not be legal due to certain restrictions and laws that are in place. So again, one of the things that we're going to tell you about any kind of usage of really anything is use at your own risk, right? That's the idea. Everything that we're going to show here, we're going to get into some of the larger, just give some tidbits on some of the larger markets that we've seen and stuff like that over time. And again, kind of get into its intended purpose versus what it's currently used for. And a lot of it, the current usage is still its intended purpose, but there's a lot of legal and moral implications that come along with some of it, obviously. So we're going to try to talk about a little bit of that. Kathy, you want to go over some of the surface web versus the deep web and dark web stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the other thing that I think people may not realize is you hear people say dark web and you hear them say deep web, and sometimes that's used interchangeably, but that is actually not the case. So top level, we have like surface web. This is where, everything is accessible to everyone. You type in, google.com or whatever, and you go there. It's only like 5 or 7%, I think, of the web that is accessible at the surface level. Most of it is actually going to be in the deep web. And these are where you're going to sign in. These are your websites that have, authentication, where you're going to access it with, some kind of authentication method, something, a password, or some way to get in. These are the things that you shouldn't be able to just get to and log in. These are going to be like, when you log into your banking apps and private forums, private networks, stuff like that. Dark web is accessible only through Tor or other browsers that support it. Here, it's not regulated, it's not, there's a number of nodes that you have to go through. Like when you log into it's called Tor is actually the onion. The onion router is what the Tor stands for. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But
so why is it called the onion router?
Because it's got layers, you've got these layers of nodes that you are passing through. The packets go through, several different IPs. It's going to route it around to, 3 different countries. And the first node, only knows the next node that it's going to. It doesn't know the one before it. It only knows the one that it's going to. So it's, by the time you get to where you're going, you're pretty much anonymous. Like the people that get caught doing things through the dark web are not getting caught on the dark web. They're getting caught because they make mistakes, like, exposing their Gmail address accidentally on a forum where they're looking for a developer for Silk Road, such as, the gentleman who, yeah, exactly. That's how he got caught. So just by entering the dark web, you're not going to break any laws. I mean, in the United States anyway, can't speak for, anyone that's not in the country. But it's like, going to the mall. Like you can go to the mall, walk around freely and do whatever you want. But, when you go into a store and you steal something, now you're breaking the law. Same thing on the dark web.
Right. That talking about the ethical considerations and legal implications of stuff, right? So,
exactly.
So it's called the onion router. It has layers. You know what else has layers? Parfaits have layers. Everybody loves parfaits. Why do you think they didn't call it the parfait router?
I don't think parfait was big back then.
Maybe not.
That seems like a more recent thing to me.
Cake can have layers. That's right. Yes, that's absolutely right. Cake can have layers. Maybe they should have called it the cake router. I don't know. I think Tor just has a better ring to it. TOR. It's just easier to say because TCR or TP. It just doesn't sound right? So
it has great branding too. Have you seen like the onion hoodies they have? Like they have like Tor hoodies with the tendrils from the onion going down. I encourage you to Google it. They're really cool.
Seen that.
I have not seen that actually. It makes me think of the security onion though. Big shout out to Doug out there if he's ever gets around to watching this.
Mm-hmm.
So the content, right? Content we're looking for.
Yeah.
The content we're looking for is going to be more along the lines of credentials and other types of OPSEC information out there. What are we looking for? What is the word I'm looking for right now? OSINT. Good grief. Open source intelligence. There's a lot of open source intelligence you can find through dark web monitoring, through dark web forums and stuff like that. And one of the things that Flare actually excels at is grabbing a lot of that information and then aggregating it, which is what we're going to kind of go into here in a little bit. The ethical and legal considerations around stuff like that, right? Well, if you're using it for nefarious purposes, clearly that's bad. Unless, like us, you have a contract in place from the people that you're trying to attack that says, hey, you can do this. Here's the rules of engagement. We specifically use the information we find in the shadows, right, for that particular purpose. So ethically and legally, we're still in the, for the lack of a better term, we're in the white, right? We're not in the dark side. We're in the light side of things. We're actually doing it to help people out. And of course, there's all sorts of other information you can find out there. You can find illegal drugs, run guns, there's human trafficking, fake identities, credit card numbers, all that stuff like that is, of course, it's out there as well. And
I've got a interesting little shopping list that I put together last night. I went and looked at some things because I want to mention one of the things that people seem to think is that they're going to be looking at something and they're going to accidentally fall into the dark web, which is not the case. As we found, you have to log on to Tor. You have to be very intentional about where you're going because the addresses are not like the ones we see at the top level of the internet. But so if anyone's curious how much a stolen online banking login info is going for now on the dark web, you can get that for $120. A hacked Coinbase account is $610. A forged EU passport, $4,000. You can get Android malware for about $900. So these are just some of the things that you can shop for on the dark web. I think Aaron's got a few of those here.
Yeah, so I've actually got some screenshots that I literally took today of some different sites that are out there that we're not going to get in depth on these or anything like that, but I'm showing you here Black Ops and Dread, just a couple of the sites that are available through the Onion Router network. Dread is a kind of an offshoot of what used to be a subreddit that was shut down, and then the people who were part of the subreddit basically said, you know what, we're going to develop our own little Reddit that is going to be dark web, basically dark web information. And so that's kind of what started that out. And now there's tons of information that you can look for out there, from, of course, hacking tutorials and darknet market information and drugs. One of the things that I saw that I was actually, I don't know how I feel about this, because I'm glad that it exists, but the fact that it exists makes me feel uneasy, and that's harm reduction. I didn't even know that was a thing, I guess, until today. Harm reduction, right? Yeah, basically harm reduction, from what my understanding is at this point, is that there are sites that are dedicated to giving you access to resources and materials to figure out if the stuff that you're buying online, drugs and stuff like that, the dangerous stuff you're buying online has extra stuff in it, right? Like, I mean, just as a pure guess, if you're buying some marijuana online or something like that, is it laced with fentanyl? That kind of thing, stuff that can kill you, right? So I think it's great that stuff exists as a countermeasure to, some of the really bad stuff that's out there. But the fact that it exists, just, again, it makes me uneasy.
Yeah.
The Black Ops thing here is a carding starter pack. So if you want to go figure out how to write your own credit cards and stuff like that and steal some stuff, there you go. Not going to give you where that's at, but I'm sure some of our more enterprising watchers can figure out how to access stuff, especially if I can, right?
That's another thing I want to mention is that the sellers on the dark web marketplaces, like, your reputation is everything there, right? Because there's no one is monitoring that. No one is going to come in and shut you down, and you're basically relying on the other people that are accessing it to leave reviews and say, like, this was a good product, or this is a scam. There's a lot of scams. There's a lot of stuff that starts up. People send money for malware, whatever it may be, and they don't get anything in return, or they get something that You know, I've heard all kinds of stories about back when Beanie Babies were real big. You know, there was some Beanie Baby that was super high value, and it was like a yellow bear or something, and somebody like dyed a bear and sent it to someone, and you know, it was very expensive. They couldn't do anything about it. You know, I mean, if you're buying Beanie Babies on the dark web, I don't know.
Yeah,
but just something to be aware of.
That I don't know if that defeats the purpose or if that actually is one of the primary purposes. That's an interesting one. I haven't thought about Beanie Babies in years, actually. So you still want to go there? You still want to check this stuff out? We'll start at the torproject.org. That's a great place to get a good idea of where the Tor project started. It goes into the history of Tor. It goes into how it works. And it also, they have the Tor browser there. This, as you can tell, it's the Firefox browser that's been modified specifically to fit Tor. I actually use the Brave browser as well for my Tor access and stuff like that. So
yeah, they've got that now, huh?
Yeah, it's built into Brave. It's actually pretty cool. It works pretty well. And it's actually really fast. Tor used to did not be very fast.
Yeah.
Because of all the exit nodes and the middle nodes that you were going through and stuff like that, the relay nodes. A lot of it was really slow. So that was one of the reasons why it was primarily, I'm guessing it was primarily for more nefarious purposes for a while, because I'm sure as a nefarious person, you're probably not caring that much about how fast something is, as long as it's giving you more anonymized access to things, right?
Yeah, that's going to be somewhere farther down the list, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So again, we're looking at like Dread. Here's some places you can access Proton Mail, Black Ops. Facebook has their own Onion router address. It's actually this right here, Facebook WK blah 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 blah. That is easily Googleable. By the way, if you want to just get a start with Tor and you just want to kind of play around with stuff, go check out Facebook through Tor, right? I maybe don't start with some of these other places. Proton Mail is not illegal. Proton Mail is actually a really great service that has it's a private email service that offers end-to-end encryption. And also you can create aliases for your different email accounts so that you can maintain some sense of anonymity depending on the site that you visit and stuff like that, right? Why do we want to access this? Tor was created primarily for privacy, right?
Yeah.
It was created to be a private relay between two communication entities so that they could continue doing whatever it was they were wanting to communicate about privately, right?
Yeah, and that's still a lot of it. Not just for the nefarious purpose like we talked about, but there's a lot of. I was mentioning to you earlier, my wife is Cuban and she's got family in Cuba. And when we visited there in 2019, they're pretty restricted on what they can do and what information they can access, and they all use Tor.
They all use Tor over there?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'll admit, I only started using Tor recently, actually, whenever we started doing the webcast and everything. It's not something that honestly, I was kind of scared of it because I was one of those people that was like, Tor is a scary place. Like there's a lot of stuff out there.
Absolutely. It can be, I think it's healthy to have a fear of some of the things that are, there. And
yeah.
With that, but yeah.
It's kind of like what I said in the video, quoting Ghostbusters. I've seen shit that'll turn you white. So that was one of the things that I just kind of didn't want to mess with it. And having been around it a little bit more now and been on some of these sites and everything, I realized that, yeah, some of this is absolutely, there's some really dark stuff out there, but it does have some really great purposes as well to actually protect yourself online, as far as from a privacy standpoint. If you want to remain anonymous, like this is the best way to do it, probably. Yeah. So how do we leverage it, right? How do we use it? Well, again, we're looking at all sorts of stuff as far as like, can we find any information about internal networks? Can we find any information about credentials? Can we find any information about, external networks, web applications, whatever it is that we access as part of a pen test? We're going to be looking at Flare and at all these different dark web forums and stuff like that, trying to aggregate as much data as we can, right? We're using it for all that threat intel and everything. And one of the great things that we actually use it for is what we used to, it's called internally dark web monitoring, but it is called
threat exposure management.
There it is. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Powered by Flare.
Powered by Flare. That's right. Yeah. So what we have here actually is a screenshot of what we see in Flare, right? And then here in a minute, we're actually going to get into the Flare demo with Eric. But this is one of the things that whenever we're looking for, say, for instance, we're looking for a domain, or if we're looking for a specific user, we're trying to find some information about, maybe there's plain text credentials that we can grab that we can try against a web app, or we can try it against remote desktop on an external remote desktop server, right? We're going to try all that information, especially during a pen test, to see if there's anything that we can access with it. In particular, I wanted to point out here that these credentials are in plain text. This is from a GitHub repo. Now, this GitHub repo is public, right? This is not a
you're not seeing anything.
Obfuscate, blah blah blah. No, this is a public repo. That's Jason Gillum. He's our CIO here and one of the owners for Secure Ideas. This information is out there, available to everybody, and it's the MySQL database password, right, for Samurai. Samurai is one of the projects that we have developed here for years as a web application training framework. Now, it used to be a web testing framework, but the idea is that this kind of stuff shows up in GitHub, right? What kind of stuff shows up in your GitHub? If we're looking for a domain address for google.com, right? We may go Google, or we may go throw google.com in there and see if there's anything that comes back with any kind of credentials or any other kind of secrets and stuff like that, API keys or any other kind of secrets, right? And that stuff can be presented in plain text to us. And if we see that in a GitHub repo, guess who else can see that in a GitHub repo? Anybody who has access to that GitHub repo. And if Flare can see it, more than likely it's public, right? And if that stuff is public, we can guarantee that somebody is finding that and trying to access your network with it. So one of the ideas that we use, of course, is we take this information, attack your stuff, and try to show you where we found it at, so that you can hopefully take it off, change passwords, whatever else it is that needs to take place, so that you can make your systems more secure, right? So let's get into the Flare demo. Just real quick, this is a screenshot that I took off of Flare's website earlier this morning. You can kind of get an idea. This is the aggregated data that they have that they then ingest into the platform, right? From the clear web, we're talking surface web, anything that's just publicly accessible. Dark web markets, GitHub repos, as we already talked about, paste sites like Pastebin and Paste. I forget. There's a couple others. Pastebin is the first one that really comes to mind because I've used it quite a bit. Forum posts where people are putting any kind of information about their systems or anything like that online, and of course illicit chat rooms. Aggregates all this data into Flare and then pushes it out, right, Eric?
That's exactly right. So just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Eric Clay. I'm the co-lead of threat intelligence research at Flare. I also lead our community department, and I am excited to demo Flare to everybody today. Is this where you want me to go, Aaron, or did you have anything you want to add first?
Absolutely, please do. Take over, bud.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a moment. And I'm going to show you guys Flare. And I'm going to start by saying, so I'm going to be pivoting back and forth between the platform, and then I have kind of a special thing to show you to provide some additional context. I will say we've sanitized pretty much everything in here, although I will show you one real post from a ransomware forum, just because it's really, really interesting. To set you up first, though, at a base level here, we have this global search capacity, and I've searched Scatterholt. And Scatterholt is this kind of fictitious name. Now, these are actually real dark web posts. We've just kind of changed the name, changed the username up here. But you can see we have a threat actor here talking in Russian about compromising the Bank of Scatterholt. We also changed the bank names as well. But this is very commonly what you would see on a dark web forum. So it's the source is darknet, estimated create date, first seen date, when we last saw the forum post up, the actual link to the thread of the forum post, and then kind of a summary of why our search term for Scatterholt triggered on this specific post. I can click the content tab here and see kind of the full forum thread inline. And I can also click AI Assist and get a kind of an exact breakdown of what's going on with this forum post. So in this case, this is a real dark web forum post again, where the user Frez outlines a guide for cyber criminals on how to exploit enrolled credit cards. And this is a really common type of thing that you'll see on the dark web, is guides to circumvent fraud systems, guides to circumvent know your customer systems, cracked security software in some cases that's being given away for cyber criminals to use. These are all really, really common use cases on the dark web. The other one here is somebody selling access to personal bank accounts. In this case, Bank of Scatterholt. Again, this is anonymized. But this is another thing you'll really, really see very commonly is I have access to 100 financial services accounts of XYZ Bank, and I'm going to sell them for $500. And the total balance on each bank account is between this number and this number. And you'll even see threat actors vouching for each other and saying, oh, I bought from XYZ person. And, he was very legitimate. He followed through. And in some cases, the forums will even act as arbitrators. Now, having seen this, I'm going to switch over and actually show you guys a real dark web post. So here we have a post from the dark web forum RAMP. RAMP stands for the Russian Anonymous Marketplace. And this is a cybercrime forum that really came to prominence in the last couple of years after the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack back in 2021. A lot of mainstream Russian cybercrime forums, for lack of a better term, actually banned discussions of ransomware. And so all of the ransomware groups moved over to the RAMP forum. And in this case, this post is actually recruiting for a new ransomware as a service group called Beast Ransomware. And so this is a ransomware group that'll probably come to prominence, start launching ransomware attacks against various companies, harvesting their data, and then publishing that data on dark web blogs if the victim doesn't pay. And so RAMP is where you see a ton of ransomware activity now, mostly because ransomware groups have actually been banned from Telegram and from most other kind of cybercrime forums, even just because of how high risk it's considered to be, because of the level that U.S. law enforcement is focusing on. Now, before we go any further, I'm actually going to pivot over and show you guys a file. And I'm going to show you this file because it's really, really pivotal to understand kind of the value that Secure Ideas is bringing with Flare and the kinds of things that Flare is looking for. So in the end, we're looking for any kind of external exposure, anything that could leave a company vulnerable to a data breach. And that could be a threat actor talking about them on the dark web. That could be a threat actor talking about TTPs to get around their know your customer rules on a Telegram channel. Or that could be stolen credentials, or even more concerning, info stealer malware that's compromised a computer at this person's company. So this is an anonymized dealer log, so all of this data is fake. I'm not going to show you any real credential data here, but this is what a stealer log looks like. We took a real stealer log and kind of hollowed it out and put in fake data, but it's really, really good for illustrative purposes. And so basically what you have here is info stealer malware has infected a user and stolen all of the credentials, session cookies, clipboard data, and a bunch of other data like the browser fingerprint that's going to basically allow a threat actor to gain direct access to financial services accounts, cryptocurrency accounts, and in some cases corporate SaaS applications that have been saved. So I'm going to go into autofills here. Again, this is not real data, but you can see it's pulled from the autofills on this user's browser. So you have his email that he saved, you have his Amex, it's fake Amex number, the address, social security number, mother's maiden name, all sorts of random things that people save in their browser. InfoStealer malware pulls that, but that's not all it pulls. We can also go into cookies. It's pulled session cookies, which threat actors can really easily use for session hijacking attacks. And so there's literally browsers where they can mimic a victim's browser. So this InfoStealer malware has stolen all this data. It's being given away in Telegram. Another criminal comes, takes this cookies file, and is able to actually replay these cookies and gain direct access to, say, a HubSpot environment or a Salesforce environment or a QuickBooks environment. And this is the number one way that companies are getting breached now, is a user downloads an InfoStealer malware through maybe cracked software like cracked Adobe Photoshop or something like that. The malware steals all of the credentials and session cookies on their device, packages them up, and they end up being given away in a Telegram channel, and then other threat actors can simply use them to log in. Last but not least, I will mention the passwords.txt file, perhaps the holy grail in the stealer log, where you have all of the user's passwords, credential sets that they've saved in their browser. Patreon, Roblox, Netflix, Disney+, HubSpot, Okta.companyportal.com, anything they've saved in their browser any passwords and this works across Firefox, it works across Chrome, it works across Microsoft Edge, it works across Brave. All of it gets stolen, packaged up into the single stealer log, and then traded on the cybercrime ecosystem. And for context, right now, we believe there's about 75 to 100 million info stealer logs in the ecosystem. So this is a massive problem. Most companies over 1,000 employees have probably been affected by this. I can show you. So I've showed you kind of the raw stealer log. Let me show you what this looks like in Flare. So this is, again, fake data. But here you'll see Patrick Smith at scatterholt.com. So we've set global search to match against any mentions of Scatterholt or fictitious environment. You'll see this is the user who's been compromised, and here are the corporate credentials that have been compromised. We try to call that out to make it really easy so folks like Secure Ideas can use them for pen testing, red teaming assessments, any kind of offensive or defensive security. Security teams can also bring this into a security operations center. So we have vpn.scatterholt.com/fedramp login with the credential Patrick Smith at Scatterholt. We have crm.scatterholt.com, same credential, and then we have Scatterholt network login. So these are really, really high risk. If you have an employee at your company who maybe has logged into a lot of corporate SaaS applications on their home computer, they've saved all those credentials and then in their browser, and then they get hit with this malware because maybe their kid downloads, tries to download fake Robux and they end up getting infected, or they try to download cracked Adobe Photoshop and end up getting infected. All of those corporate credentials and all the session cookies that can be used to bypass two-factor authentication end up being traded or sold on Telegram usually, but also on some specific dark websites like Russian Market. Now, the other thing I want to show you in Flare is we monitor a ton of different sources. We're looking for any kind of external exposure that can leave a company or even consumers in some cases vulnerable. So we look across dark web markets, dark web forums, blog posts, threat actor profiles. We monitor over 8,000 Telegram channels right now focused on cybercrime, fraud, drugs in some cases. Ransom leaks is another huge area of concern. Threat actors now post data publicly on ransomware blogs when they manage to pull off a successful attack and the victim doesn't pay. And this can lead to substantial third-party data disclosure. We look at financial data, and then we also look at clear web data, paste, web accounts, source code, anything that can be used by a threat actor to get access to a corporate environment. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is our credentials browser feature. And again, this is a kind of red teaming pen testing use case that folks like Secure Ideas use very heavily. And again, this is all fake data. But this is basically, we could type in a domain here for a customer, or if a customer is using this for their own domain, and they can see, hey, I've got Ryan Howard at scatterholt.com. Here's the password. And then here's where we found it. It was a combo list, or it was InfoStealer malware, or it was something like that. And so we're really trying to centralize this kind of archive of cybercrime data from Telegram and the dark web with kind of one of the best credential data sets in the world across kind of traditional leak credentials, where a user signs up for a service, say LinkedIn gets breached, all their credentials end up being traded on the dark web, but also this kind of newer, more concerning threat of InfoStealer malware that steals all of a single user's credentials. And then even pairing that with clear web exposure data to provide a really holistic view of a company's external exposure that threat actors could leverage to gain access. Is there anything else you guys would like me to cover as part of that?
I mean, that's a pretty good overview there.
Yeah, no, I was really excited to hear more about the Steeler logs and everything, because that's one of the things. I have actually downloaded some of the Steeler logs before whenever we were looking for information from the perspective of trying to attack some network or whatever, right? Like there's been a couple of times where we've found Steeler logs that they are tied to a specific domain, but they don't actually have, apparently it was some kind of a client or something like that. And so we've advised our clients anytime we see something like that, of course, hey, listen, you may have some kind of a user that may have had their stuff popped in. We want to let them know.
Yeah, or a third party that doesn't have anything to do with the client, but somebody's using the same username and password or they're using their work email to log into something else.
And that's always helpful too, because sometimes they use the same password over and over, which is great.
Yeah.
I will say that hearing about the fake Robux and stuff like that really, that's eye-opening. And now I need to go check out and see if my son's email address pops up anywhere in the Flare logs.
Right.
Looking at distribution methods for info stealers is really interesting. So what threat actors typically do is they distribute it through cracked software. So they'll say like, hey, Adobe Photoshop free, or there was a AI application recently that threat actors had built, kind of like a fake landing page for, and you had to download it. So it wasn't the AI app at all. And then they actually they'll do account takeovers against Google Ads accounts and YouTube accounts, and then use those to promote their kind of like free cracked software. So they'll like take over some YouTube account with 5,000 subscribers, make a short video about how they can, anybody viewing can download this free software, and then link to one of the file sharing sites in the description, and then people stumble across this looking for the software on YouTube, or maybe they Google free XYZ software, they click on it, they do the download, and suddenly they're infected, and all of their data is getting siphoned off into a Telegram channel.
I really hate how brilliant that is, actually.
I know,
right?
Like, jeez.
Like that's a really great like kill chain right there, as far as like supply chain stuff and everything of attacks. Jeez, it's weird. Okay, so moving on, Eric, thank you so much, sir.
Absolutely.
We would love for you to stick around. We're actually only just got a couple slides left, and one of them is, we're going to recap over. This is what I believe you said. So this is what Silk Road looked like whenever people tried to access it after.
Yeah, once the FBI shut it down, people were greeted with this when they tried to log into it. I'm sure Silk Road is not the only one, but this probably comes up a lot now.
Yeah, I've seen variations of this as well, and also I've seen it pop up in fake malware and stuff like that.
Absolutely,
this computer has been seized by the FBI. Download this, blah blah blah.
Yeah, send us this money, or we'll release what you've been doing to your family. Yeah. Right,
exactly. My other favorite is, we've seen what you've been doing through your web through your webcam.
Yes, we've got access.
I'm sure you probably have. It's pretty boring.
Right.
Of course, our shameless self-promotion. This is where we talk about everything we talked about here, right? We actually offer threat exposure management, what our dark web monitoring service for our clients, and you can get a weekly report every Friday, I believe is what Josh told me earlier, of what your threat exposure is from Flare. This is all powered by Flare. We actually have access to their API. We have access to the Flare personnel and everything that helps us to aggregate this data and then give it to our clients. Highly recommended if you're worried, especially as a large organization, about your dark web exposure. Give us, check it out at some point. You can access that on secureideas.com. Find more information under the products and threat exposure management. So at this point, I cannot believe, Kathy, we actually made it under the 45-minute mark. Can you? Even with all this talk about horror movies and everything else earlier, like, I'm very excited that we got under the time frame that we were supposed to do.
I know.
This might be a first for me personally.
Right?
Typically
so much
speaking,
more that we could talk about for hours, but
yes, especially horror movies. I mean,
yes, yeah, it did.
Kathy and I have talked extensively about horror movies because we're both huge horror nerds and everything. So that's something that comes up quite often.
As big as Aaron's, but I've got a lot of the little stuff. He makes his own cool toys. I buy mine.
I do make a lot of my own cool toys. You can find them at etsy.com//designs.
Go back to that same shameless.
Yeah, that's it right there. Shameless self-promotion. I should have put my /designs in there, right? Yeah. All right. So if there's any questions, please let us know. You can reach us at any point in time at aaron.moss@secureideas.com or Kathy@secureideas.com, right?
Actually, well, that one works, but Kathy.collins@secureideas.com.
Okay. I think Aaron@secureideas works for me as well, but we came in after they stopped using first names for everything because they want to be cool. So, I always want to have my first name. It's okay.
Yeah, it'll still work. It'll come through. You've got all those aliases. But one of the other things I just wanted to point out real quick is, we've been talking about how we utilize Flare during pen tests, and we don't just, we don't gatekeep that information when we do pen tests. We use it during the pen test, and then when we write the report at the end, we do have a teaser from Flare where we put some of that information that we've used in there.
Yep.
And, we give that to our clients too, so they can see what we've been using. We're not just like, oh, we went in and, we hacked all these things, secrets. We are very transparent about that.
yeah, we try to absolutely let our clients know, here's what we found. Here's how you can access more of it. Give us more money. So I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of like what Kevin says. I'm a greedy capitalist. So that's why we're doing this, right? We want to help people, but we like making money. So whatever.
It's about my choice.
Eric, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it for me. Thank you so much for the invite. And I
Absolutely.
definitely, Secure Ideas is one of our top partners, so I really do recommend people take advantage of the service they're using Flare for. They add a lot of professional expertise on top of the platform data.
That almost, I'm not gonna lie, that makes me feel real good inside. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, so until we meet again, everybody, we actually have another webcast coming up with Flare. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, so don't hold me to this, but I believe Kevin is actually part of that one.
That is correct.
That's what I thought. Okay, and Eric, you're actually doing that webcast as well, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a kind of a Q&A interview with Kevin 2 days after the election. So that should be really exciting. I'm sure it'll be big news. It'll definitely overshadow November 5th.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's going to be, I'm going to tune in just with some.
Yeah, we'll sit back, see that one.
Sit back and eat popcorn.
That's 2 weeks from today. Yep. And then
this is what happens when you let Canadians schedule your webinars.
I love it. I love it. Gabby, you want to talk about B-Sides Jacks?
Yeah, the week after, Saturday, November 16th. Actually, the 15th and the 16th. As I mentioned, I'm one of the coordinators for B-Sides Jacksonville, and it is in a few weeks. The 15th, that Friday, we have workshops. We have several of our consultants from Secure Ideas teaching workshops. Eric Kuhn and Jennifer Shannon doing their thing. Jennifer, I think, is doing the API, which is, one of her specialties. And Eric, of course, is AD because he is the master. But the day after, we have, on the 16th, we have the conference at the University of North Florida. Workshops are there as well. Tickets are on sale now. You can go to the website. It's just B-Sides Jacksonville. I thought I put the email or the website on here, but it is bsidesjacksonville.com. So check it out. Come see us. I'll be there. Josh will be there. Most of us from the Jacksonville office will be there. So come check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic.